Imagine living in a world where it was illegal to whistle on Sundays, wear purple clothes, or even eat ice cream in public. Sounds absurd. Yet every one of these bans once existed, written, enforced, and punished. In this video, we're diving into the eerie archives of human lawmaking to uncover 50 of the strangest, most nonsensical laws that were once deadly serious. From absurd royal decrees to bizarre town rules, these forgotten bans reveal just how weirdly society once tried to control everyday life. 1. In 19th century England, it was technically illegal to die inside the Houses of Parliament. The reason? Anyone dying there was entitled to a state funeral funded by the Crown. So if you felt sick, guards might rush you outside rather than call a doctor. Imagine collapsing mid-speech and being dragged to the street. Not for disrespect, but to avoid paperwork and royal expenses. Bureaucracy literally decided where you were allowed to die. 2. In the 1940s, Lexington, Kentucky, made it illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket on Sundays. Why? Horse thieves once used cones to lure animals away without technically stealing them. By the time the law remained, nobody remembered why, only that pocketed ice cream was sinful behavior on a holy day. It's a perfect example of moral panic fused with livestock management and leftover Puritan guilt. 3. In ancient Rome, purple dye was so rare and expensive it was reserved for emperors. Wearing it without imperial permission was a capital crime. One small drop of Tyrian purple could cost more than gold. Citizens risked execution just to appear royal. Over time, the empire collapsed, but that idea of color as status endured, from monarchies to luxury fashion. The irony? Today, anyone can wear purple polyester without consequence. What was once treason became Tuesday's outfit. 4. In 2007, the Chinese government actually passed a law making it illegal for Tibetan monks to reincarnate without official permission. The logic was political. Control the spiritual continuity of Tibetan Buddhism. Imagine needing a government permit to be reborn. The state tried to legislate eternity itself. It wasn't about faith, but surveillance of souls. An attempt to monopolize immortality through paperwork and fear. 5. In 1698, Tsar Peter the Great outlawed beards across Russia. He viewed facial hair as backward and un-European. Men who refused to shave had to pay a beard tax and carry a copper token proving they'd paid for their whiskers. The medallions read, "The beard is a superfluous burden." Citizens literally paid to keep their identity. Shaving became patriotic. Beards became rebellion. The Tsar modernized his empire, one reluctant chin at a time. 6. In 1650s Massachusetts, dancing was considered an invitation to sin. The Puritans banned it entirely, and even at weddings. Mirth leads to madness, they said. Couples could only walk solemnly together, no touching, no rhythm. Music was allowed only for worship. What's wild is how deeply this fear of joy shaped early America, where laughter and movement were once policed like crimes. Freedom, apparently, didn't include your own 2 feet. 7. In the early 1900s, Buenos Aires outlawed kite flying. The city's electric cables were new, and officials feared tangled strings could cause blackouts. But soon the ban became a tool for curfew control. Children found flying paper kites could be fined or jailed. What began as public safety turned into social discipline. Even the sky was regulated. A childhood symbol of freedom became a potential act of defiance. 8. During the 17th century, Venetian authorities banned excessive jumping from bridges after nobles began staging drunken leap contests into canals. It wasn't about safety, it was about dignity. The Republic wanted its elite to look noble, not soaked. Breaking the law could mean public whipping or exile. The same bridges tourists pose on today were once crime scenes for adrenaline and aristocratic ego. 9. Until 2013. Yes, 2013. A 200-year-old law technically forbade women from wearing pants in Paris without police approval. It originated in 1800 when trousers were considered male attire. Women who wore them symbolically crossed gender lines and risked arrest. Even after modern updates, the decree lingered on paper for centuries, quietly mocking progress. It was finally repealed only a decade ago. Paris, the world's fashion capital, was legally behind its own couture. 10. Introduced in 1992, Singapore's chewing gum ban became one of the most famous modern laws. The government claimed gum litter clogged subway doors and stained sidewalks. Anyone caught importing or selling it could face jail. What outsiders saw as absurd, Singapore saw as hygiene and discipline. Citizens joked you could go to prison for a stick of Wrigley's. Ironically, that same strictness built one of the world's cleanest cities. 11. In the 1800s, Alabama made it illegal to play dominoes on Sundays. The lawmakers claimed it encouraged gambling, idleness, and moral decay. People caught casually playing were fined or even jailed for corrupting the Sabbath. Families hid their domino sets like contraband. The absurdity was that real gambling houses operated quietly under bribes, while innocent players faced punishment. The state's idea of holiness turned a harmless game of dots into a legal sin. 12. In Thailand, stepping on currency is a crime because every coin and bill bears the king's image. Accidentally dropping a coin and stepping on it to stop it from rolling could land you in jail for defaming the monarchy. The law blurs respect with worship, protecting metal over intent. Tourists unaware of the rule have been detained for years. A king's face, printed on paper, literally holds more legal protection than the people it represents. 13. In 19th century Ireland, it was once illegal to be drunk inside a pub. The law targeted publicans, not patrons, meaning the bartender could be fined if a customer appeared too merry. Officers would walk in unannounced, inspecting faces for excess joy. The irony was spectacular. Pubs were legal, alcohol was legal, but drinking was not. It was like outlawing rain inside a storm. 14. In North Korea, smiling during periods of national mourning is considered an act of treason. Citizens are required to cry in public when leaders die. Failure to appear heartbroken can lead to imprisonment or death. The state decides what emotions are lawful. Entire cities have been punished for insufficient sadness. It's not grief, it's performance. A place where facial expressions themselves can be crimes against the regime. 15. In Switzerland, it was illegal to flush toilets after 10 p.m. in apartment buildings. The government considered it noise pollution and a disturbance to neighbors' sleep. Inspectors could fine you for late-night flushing. People began sneaking around like burglars, afraid of their own plumbing. Modern cities that send rockets into space once feared the sound of a midnight flush, proof that order can drown out reason. 16. In 17th century Japan, commoners were forbidden from wearing silk. Only the samurai class and nobility could dress in such fabric. Violators faced confiscation, imprisonment, or worse. This wasn't about fabric, it was about hierarchy. Silk became a visual barcode separating privilege from poverty. Even today, Japan remembers the sumptuary laws as an era when beauty itself was illegal for the poor. 17. In 1938, Canada banned fortune-telling nationwide. The government feared psychic manipulation and considered divination a criminal fraud. Palm readers were arrested and tarot decks were burned. Yet, the irony runs deep. The same era saw governments relying on astrologers to plan political events. Banning mystics didn't kill superstition, it only made it elite. The law against predicting the future couldn't predict its own disappearance. 18. In Iceland, naming your child something unapproved is technically illegal. The government's naming committee decides which names fit Icelandic grammar and heritage. Names like Zoe, Duncan, or even Harriet were once rejected for not conforming to linguistic purity. Parents have taken the state to court just to call their child what they wish. Freedom of speech ends at your baby's birth certificate. 19. In 1970s Denmark, it was illegal to paint houses in bright colors in certain districts. Authorities wanted to preserve the town's neutral aesthetic. Residents who painted yellow or blue were fined or ordered to repaint in gray. What began as urban harmony became architectural tyranny. The ban finally eased when artists began rebelling with hidden murals, splashes of life beneath beige conformity. 20. In 18th century France, it was once illegal to eat potatoes. The church claimed they caused leprosy and farmers were forbidden to plant them. For decades, people starved while fertile fields stood empty. It took a single pharmacist, Antoine Augustin Parmentier, to prove potatoes were safe, even hosting dinners for royalty to demonstrate their worth. The nation that later worshipped French fries once feared the potato as a demonic root. 21. In the 1950s, Australia banned black clothing at beaches after officials claimed it attracted sharks. Lifeguards patrolled not for safety but for fashion violations. People sunbathing in dark swimsuits were fined or escorted away. The absurdity grew when it was revealed the rule came from superstition, not science. Sharks couldn't care less about color, but the law stuck for years. It was fear disguised as dress code, turning oceanfront freedom into a monitored monochrome. In Saudi Arabia, driving was illegal for women until 2018. For decades, women caught behind the wheel could be arrested, fined, or publicly shamed. The justification was that women's fragility might endanger traffic, a fabricated logic masking deep control. When the ban was finally lifted, thousands of women drove at midnight to reclaim what should have never been lost: movement as freedom. Laws that once imprisoned the steering wheel now fuel a quiet revolution. 23. In ancient Egypt, using yeast to bake bread was once restricted to temple priests. The fermentation process was seen as divine magic. Ordinary citizens caught baking rising bread could face punishment for blasphemy. It was food turned into sacred monopoly. Today, yeast sits in every kitchen cabinet, but millennia ago, baking the wrong loaf meant offending the gods themselves. Humanity outlawed bread before it outlawed war. 24. In 19th century France, photographing street scenes without police consent was forbidden. Authorities feared criminals could map the city visually. Early photographers risked arrest for capturing buildings or bridges. Ironically, those same forbidden photos are now priceless records of Parisian history. The state once banned memory itself, fearing that preserving the world might make it uncontrollable. Cameras became contraband for curiosity. 25. In the 1950s, Canada's government outlawed apology letters between same-sex partners, labeling them as evidence of deviance. Men caught writing emotional letters were jailed under gross indecency laws. Even expressing remorse or affection became criminal. The quiet heartbreak of that era remains one of the country's darkest legal chapters, proof that the line between love and law can be sharper than a blade. 26. In North Korea, it was once illegal to fold newspapers that carried images of the leader. People reading state papers had to hold them flat or risk accusations of disrespect. Even discarding old issues was dangerous. Many buried or burned them secretly at night. Paper became sacred, words untouchable. The country that banned folding paper also banned bending truth. 27. In 19th century England, selling chocolate without a pharmacy license was a punishable offense. Chocolate was classified as a mind-altering substance, comparable to medicine or drugs. Only licensed apothecaries could sell it legally. People smuggled cocoa through underground markets, and secret chocolate clubs emerged across London. The same society that outlawed pleasure later built an empire on it, one sweet contradiction at a time. 28. In Switzerland, owning just one guinea pig was made illegal in 2008. Lawmakers ruled that guinea pigs are social creatures and must live in pairs. Having only one was considered animal cruelty. While the law sounds noble, it created absurd cases. Grieving owners renting temporary guinea pigs for dying pets to avoid legal loneliness. Compassion, when legislated, sometimes creates comedy. 29. In 1800s Italy, whistling in public at night was outlawed. Authorities believed it summoned demons and disturbed the dead. Night patrols enforced the rule with fines or lashes. For decades, silence became safety. Ironically, whistling, a simple human tune, was once treated as supernatural rebellion. The country that later gave the world opera once criminalized melody itself. 30. In 1979, the Iranian government banned Western music entirely. Radios fell silent, stores burned vinyl records, and even humming Beatles songs could bring arrest. The goal was purity, but the silence only amplified resistance. Secret concerts moved underground. Musicians recorded albums hidden in basements. What began as censorship became the seed of a cultural revolution. Because you can ban instruments, but not rhythm. 31. In 19th century Japan, it was illegal to step on writing, even accidentally. Because paper sometimes carried sacred calligraphy or poetry, stepping on a sheet, even blank, was considered blasphemy. Travelers could be arrested for littering unknowingly. It turned paper into holy ground. Ironically, centuries later, Japan became the birthplace of paper recycling, transforming what was once untouchable into something meant to be reborn endlessly. Reverence turned into renewal, law into art. 32. In 1930s Italy, Mussolini's government banned typewriters for private citizens. They feared underground writers spreading anti-fascist messages. Owning or using a typewriter without registration was a crime. Every keystroke had to be traceable to a permit number. Writers became whisperers, their words smuggled by hand. The nation that once produced Dante outlawed typing because dictators fear ink more than bullets. 33. In Victorian England, it was illegal for women to eat in public restaurants without a male escort. Solo dining was equated with prostitution. Women caught doing so could be removed or fined for improper presence. Imagine craving tea but needing legal male validation to sip it. A century later, London cafes became icons of independence, the same spaces that once criminalized solitude. 34. In 19th century Germany, it was forbidden to whistle inside factories. Authorities believed it disrupted productivity and tempted workers to idleness. Supervisors patrolled aisles listening for melody like prison guards. Workers who whistled were fined or fired. Decades later, that same whistle would become a symbol of labor solidarity, proof that silence never truly wins over spirit. 35. In 1920s New York, wearing a mask in public was banned, except during approved parades. The law came after anarchist attacks, but it stayed for decades. Ironically, during the COVID-19 pandemic, not asterisk wearing a mask became illegal. A single century turned one crime into its opposite, showing how morality, like fashion, simply shifts with the air. 36. In medieval France, reading the Bible in your native language was once a capital crime. The church feared translation would empower commoners to interpret scripture freely. Translators were burned, readers imprisoned. The word of God became private property of clergy. What was banned as heresy became, centuries later, a global right, proof that no law can silence curiosity forever. 37. In early 1900s, South Korea, writing love letters in red ink was illegal. Red symbolized death, so authorities interpreted it as a curse. Couples secretly used blue or black pens, hiding their affection from superstition. The fear ran so deep that even bureaucrats refused red signatures. Today, red ink seals marriage contracts, the same hue once feared as deadly. 38. In England, eating mince pies on Christmas Day was once illegal under Oliver Cromwell's Puritan rule in the 1600s. The pastry was seen as a symbol of gluttony and Catholic excess. Soldiers raided homes for festive desserts. People baked in secret, celebrating joy as rebellion. The dessert now represents holiday cheer. Once, it represented defiance. 39. In 1970s, China, growing private flowers in your garden was outlawed during the Cultural Revolution. Beauty was labeled bourgeois. Only state-approved crops were legal. Citizens caught cultivating roses could face re-education. Yet people still planted them. Small, hidden, forbidden gardens that bloomed quietly against control. Those secret petals became whispers of freedom in a gray world. 40. In the 18th century, Venice outlawed mirrors larger than a handspan. The reason was vanity. The church believed large mirrors tempted pride. People were forced to use tiny handheld ones, turning self-reflection into literal limitation. It's poetic. A city of beauty banned seeing oneself too clearly. The law faded, but the irony remains. Venice banned mirrors, yet invented reflection. 41. In 19th century London, it was illegal to transport corpses during daytime hours. Hearses could only move at night to avoid disturbing public morale. Families were forced to hide mourning behind moonlight. Gravediggers worked like ghosts, and cemeteries echoed with nocturnal burials. Death itself became a curfewed activity. The city that never slept forced grief into darkness, proving how even sorrow was once legislated to be silent. 42. In 1935, Greece banned rebetiko music, a raw, soulful genre born from refugees and street poets. Authorities called it degenerate and subversive. Musicians were arrested, instruments smashed, lyrics censored. Yet, underground taverns kept the songs alive. Those smoky outlaw melodies later defined Greek culture. What was once criminal sorrow became the nation's immortal heartbeat, proof that band art never truly dies. 43. In 1960s Ireland, it was illegal to sell condoms or even mention them in public advertisements. The church declared contraception a sin against life. Couples traveled across borders to smuggle birth control, hiding them in tea boxes. Politicians called it the war on rubber. It took decades of protest before Ireland legalized something as basic as choice. Morality was once dictated by the pulpit, not reason. 44. In 17th century Russia, it was illegal to play musical instruments during funerals. The Orthodox Church banned them, claiming only pure human voices should mourn the dead. Violins were seized, drums burned. Musicians resorted to humming under their breath, transforming grief into hidden rhythm. Ironically, those whispered notes birthed Russian folk laments, the sound of rebellion disguised as prayer. 45. In 19th century New Zealand, tattooing one's face was outlawed for Maori people under the Tamoko ban. The colonial government viewed it as barbaric. Police shaved heads and arrested anyone with cultural tattoos. It wasn't just skin they criminalized, it was identity itself. The ban lasted nearly a century. Today, Maori proudly revive moko as symbols of survival. What was once erased is now sacred again. 46. In 1948, Japan banned kissing in public. American occupation officials considered it un-Japanese and indecent. Couples caught kissing were fined or detained. For a culture known for subtlety, affection became scandal. Decades later, Japan would host World Kiss Day events. The same act that once warranted punishment became celebration. The moral compass spins fast when culture meets control. 47. In 18th century England, men were fined for wearing women's wigs. Authorities saw the powdered curls as symbols of French corruption. Effeminate vanity, they called it. Yet the same judges who banned wigs wore towering ones in court. The hypocrisy was hilarious, law punishing fashion while fashion wrote the law. Even hair became political currency. 48. In 1967, Romania banned Scrabble. The communist regime declared it a subversive intellectual game that promoted elitism. Owning a Scrabble set could get you arrested. Citizens played secretly, drawing letters on cardboard and hiding boards in cupboards. The very act of forming words became rebellion. The government feared vocabulary more than violence, proof that tyranny trembles before thought. 49. In medieval England, it was illegal to eat meat on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. The church dictated fish days to enforce fasting and sell more seafood from royal waters. Breaking the rule wasn't just sin, it was treason against the crown's stomach. Butchers ran black markets, selling secret beef under candlelight. Religion and profit shared the same menu. 50. In 19th century USA, Kansas banned catching rainwater on private property. The logic: rain belonged to the state. Farmers who collected it were fined for theft of resources. It turned clouds into government property. Today, in some states, similar restrictions linger quietly. Humanity once outlawed the sky, a reminder that nothing is too infinite to be claimed by law.